Is aim assist overpowered? Alright, let's talk about it. It's been a hot topic ever since crossplay was introduced, so strap yourself in, grab a snack, grab a drink, enjoy the gameplay in the background, and let's talk about it. I feel I understand both platforms quite well. I mean, I've played console a lot back in the day, and I've only recently started to switch over to mouse and keyboard over the past year or so. So maybe I'm one-sided ever so slightly, but just hear me out, because I've been in both seats. So I feel like I've got some idea of where both parties are coming from, whether you feel it is overpowered and whether you feel it's complete nonsense. Now, I switch between games quite a lot, and there's games that prefer mouse and keyboard, and there's games that prefer controller as well. So, I mean, you can play controller with Battlefield, Call of Duty, GTA, things like that. You can, it's absolutely fine, but there's some other games that you really can't play with a controller. The likes of Squad, for example. Now, I know there is an actual controller scheme in Squad, but if you've ever tried to play it with a controller, you know it's useless and it's just not going to happen. So, from my personal perspective, my own personal experience, I've had to play with both quite a lot. Because yes, controller was my preferred, but there are a lot of games I really wanted to enjoy and be good at with a mouse and keyboard. So I've had to go cold turkey on playing with controller and play with mouse and keyboard for an extended period of time, which has left me in some areas really understanding the mouse and keyboard point of view as well. And that's because I've been killed by both. Now, we've all been in that situation where, for example, you're a controller player and you've been beamed across the map and you're like, I don't think that guy would have killed me if he was using a controller. And to be honest, you might be right. You're probably right in some circumstances. But on the flip side, I've also been killed by someone who's using a controller whilst I was using mouse and keyboard at close range and thought he tracked me far too well. And I think someone with a mouse and keyboard probably would have struggled a bit more to get those shots off on me if he was using a mouse and keyboard. So, you know, there's ups and downs to both, as we all know, and there's different scenarios where they have their strengths and weaknesses. And everyone knows when you die and you get frustrated in the game, you're always looking for an excuse. You're always looking for an excuse, whether it's the hardware you're using, the platform that you're using, the platform the other person's using. You're always looking for an excuse before you end up blaming yourself, which is only normal, by the way. I've done it, I get frustrated, everyone does it. It's absolutely fine. But my point is, maybe it's not always what you're blaming it on. For example, the platform. It's aim assist. Oh, it's mouse and keyboard. Do they have a distinct advantage? And it comes down to implementation at the end of the day as well. I mean, some games have really strong aim assist and some games don't. I found that using mouse and keyboard versus controller in Battlefield 5, for example, that platform on PC at least really benefits a mouse and keyboard player, because from a console person's perspective and someone who's played a lot of controller games in the past, I know for a fact that using a controller on that game is playable, absolutely playable, but it doesn't feel the same as when you're playing on console. I've put in hundreds of hours into the console version of Battlefield 5, jumped onto the PC version, and you tried to use a controller at the beginning, and it felt off. It felt weird. It just didn't feel the same. Now, I fine-tuned it in the settings and made it a little bit more to what I'm used to, but you cannot get a one-to-one ratio, and that's understandable, because I think on the console variant of that game, it's going to be stronger. But it's a level playing field. So my point is in there, if you're going to be using a controller on Battlefield 5, for example, it's not going to be as familiar as using it on a console. Whereas if you're using a mouse and keyboard on Battlefield 5, I feel like you got a little bit of advantage. But that being said, there's some games where it's the complete opposite. So if you go on the Master Chief Collection, for example, and play Halo with a mouse and keyboard, I feel you've actually got a pretty wide disadvantage. Now, if you're a good mouse and keyboard player, you're going to be fine. You're going to be absolutely fine. But if you're just an average player and you're just, trying to relax now before you're not playing competitively, the people with the controllers, they're going to have a bit of an advantage, because I feel the aim assist implementation on that game specifically is actually fairly strong in comparison to others. And again, that is the decision from the developers themselves, and you can't do too much about that. And I guess that's where the frustration lies, is that you might really want to play Halo, but you're not used to controller, so the only way you can play it is mouse and keyboard comfortably at least, and yet you feel like you're at a disadvantage. Now, the age-old saying goes that a good mouse and keyboard player will always be a good controller player, and I will actually tend to agree with that, even though I do favour controller at this time, and I'm better with a controller than mouse and keyboard, even though I've been trying to get better with the mouse and keyboard, and I still kind of suck at it. I still do admit that a really good mouse and keyboard player will always be a really good controller player, and that's just the way it's designed. So, aim assist is necessary, as much as people don't believe it is, and it's overpowered. In most circumstances, it is absolutely necessary. You just think of the logistics. With mouse and keyboard, you're aiming with your whole hand at a speed that you can control 100%, as long as you've got a big enough mouse mat. That's always an issue. But with the controller, you're just using your thumb. And obviously, with both sides, it depends on your peripherals as well. Because if you've got a crappy controller with tiny little thumbsticks, it's going to make it harder. If you've got a really low-end gaming mouse with a low DPI, for example, not that makes too much difference these days because they're all relatively good in that area, but you get my point. And on top of that, in my experience, I haven't actually seen an aim assist that would change that theory, that a good mouse and keyboard player would be a good controller player. There's no implementation that I've seen that is that overpowered that would change. Now, I'm not saying, two average players would have a different outcome, because like I said, in Halo, if you've got an average controller player against an average mouse and keyboard player, I think the controller player would come out on top in that aspect. But that is just, that's a game that's designed solely for console. And I'm not saying that's a good thing. I think there should be a tuning on that. I mean, I think there's some clips come out of Halo Infinite recently where it's just ridiculous. And I'm not looking forward to that, even from a controller player, because I'm trying to learn to play with mouse and keyboard, and if I'm trying to learn on that game specifically, then it's going to be a nightmare for me, isn't it? Because I'm just going to get stomped. So there is issues there. I'm not saying it's all perfect, but again, it is down to the implementation, and it is very rare that I see aim assist really come out on top in most games. And I think it's got an air of just trying to get used to each other as well. I mean, we're actually in its infancy in terms of crossplay. It hasn't actually been a thing for that long, and I'm really happy about it as well, that it is being implemented more, but it is still really young in its life cycle, and there's still going to be hitches and bumps, and just getting used to playing with one another, but knowing that there's someone else on the opposite team that is using a controller or a mouse and keyboard, something different to you, it is just going to give you something to blame, if something goes wrong. It is. Or something to laugh at if you absolutely annihilate them. Either way, it literally is 50-50. It doesn't always have to be a negative. It is a positive. I genuinely think the crossplay thing is a massive positive for the gaming community. It really is. And I think we are focusing on, and rightly so, some areas where it is a bit of a negative aspect of this, because some people don't want to have that thought in the back of their head because they believe it is really an issue, and it's always one of them. You give someone 10% of a reason to argue, and they will argue it, and they make everyone else feel like it's the majority of the issue of the game, that it's a bigger problem than it is what I'm trying to say there. When it really isn't. It's really not that big of a deal. It's just very certain circumstances where it becomes an advantage or disadvantage on both sides as well. For example, I've kind of learned that if I'm using mouse and keyboard and I know someone's using a controller on the opposite team that's been beating me, then I keep my distance, because I know I've got the advantage at a distance the majority of the time, because I've got more pinpoint accuracy at longer ranges with a mouse and keyboard. And the flip side as well, if I'm using a controller and someone's using a mouse and keyboard, then try and get close and personal, because you've got that aim assist advantage when you're strafing and you're up close and you're aiming down sights and things like that. So again, it swings and roundabouts. There's strengths and weaknesses on both sides, and it's depending on which side you're on, you just have to play to them, and you're not always going to be against the opposite as well, and you're going to have the opposites on your team too. So again, relax. It's not that bad. in the majority of the cases, it's not that bad. At the end of the day, there is a clear advantage for both. There really is. I mean, if you're good with a controller, stick to playing with a controller. If you're good to playing with mouse and keyboard, then stick to playing with mouse and keyboard, unless you're in a predicament like me where there are some games that you really want to play with mouse and keyboard. There's some games that you really want to play with controller. I'm not sure why you'd want to do that though, to be honest, because mouse and keyboard plays everything these days, majority of the time. It's really just if you want to play hardcore mil sims like Squad or 0 Hour and things like that, then you have to make the jump to mouse and keyboard, unfortunately. But if you're not bothered by that, then stick to the platform you're good at, and I think you'd be just fine. And just remember that there's always going to be players that are better than you, regardless how good you are. During a game, there's always going to be someone who's better than you. Either they're just fresher minded, they're genuinely just better skilled, or you just have a bad game, Just because they use a different platform is not going to change that. It still happened when the crossplay wasn't a thing. I'm just happy we're given the choice though. At the end of the day, more choice is better. And that goes for pretty much everything in life. The bigger the player base, the better. And it really is a positive. And I think, yeah, there's some kinks to work out. And as long as we're given the choice, and people are given the choice of whether they want to be crossplay or not, and that's absolutely great and fantastic. But I think also they should be given the choice to play with players on a different platform, because there are some players that play console still that I really want to play with. I've got friends that only play on Xbox or PlayStation. I want to be able to play my games with them, and vice versa as well. So the more choice, the better. I honestly don't think it's that much of an issue at this time. Obviously, there are some outliers there, and they do need to be fixed. But on the grand scheme of things, I think we just need to relax a little bit. Realize that you are just looking for something to blame the majority of the time, and just enjoy yourself. Enjoy playing the game. Yeah, someone's using mouse and keyboard and they're gonna absolutely annihilate you at times, and someone's playing a controller and they're going to annihilate you at some other times, you know. It is what it is. But I want to know what you think of this situation. Obviously, if you feel different, that's absolutely fine. Let me know in the comments down below. I'm sure people have got very heated and loaded opinions on this topic, and that's absolutely okay. But please be nice to each other in the comments if you're going to be commenting down there. But I'm intrigued to hear what you think, so do let me know. But until next time, guys, I'm going to leave it there. Cheers. Appreciate it all. Like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. Take care.